Okay, there it is.
Or none, yeah, that's true. I mean,
At least then when I can't sleep.
yeah, yeah.
That's what it was.
All right, we're at 6 o'clock. I'm going to call this special May County Board meeting to order. Please join me for a pledge of allegiance and moment of silence. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Roll call shows we have 3 supervisors absent, 18 present. We have a quorum. Next, I'd look for approval of the agenda. I'd look for a motion to approve.
Last one second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. Agenda is approved. Moving on to members of the public wishing to be heard. We have one. We have Dennis Mickish. Please come up to the podium. You'll have 5 minutes, Dennis. Oh, to the podium, please. There's a mic at the podium. We are live on YouTube. Use our mics.
It's been a while since I've been in the courthouse here. I worked in this building for a number of years, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm talking about the lack of beds in our area. I've experienced some conditions, it's unbelievable. My neighbor down the street had health issues, and he was in the emergency, and they shipped him over to Wausau. His family had to travel over to Wausau to see him. My friend down in Eau Claire, who I have coffee with, has Parkinson's disease. They trucked him off to Sparta to have a hospital bed. Now, I don't know if any of you county board members have experienced this, but it's a dire situation, and we need to rectify it. And I'll tell you about my personal experience. I was up at the farm working, and I had a health issue, and I had to go down to Mayo. And they said at the emergency room, "We're going to put you in the scenic room." Well, guess what the scenic room was? It was a garage. And the scenery was a garage door opener. But we got a chance to rectify this. This cooperative hospital is an answer. And we need your help to solve this situation in Chippewa County. For your future, I'm up in age. I may not have the advantage of that hospital, but the future generations need access to hospital beds when their loved ones need care. And so I hope you can help us with this situation here in Chippewa County. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes members of the public wishing to be heard. We will move on to consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda.
Possible consent agenda.
Supervisor Goodman will second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions? Hearing none, we'll call the vote. 18 yes, 0 no. Consent agenda is approved. Now we'll move on to our one business item here, Resolution 11-26, resolution to grant authorization to apply for the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program grant.
Resolution number 11-26, resolution to grant authorization to apply for Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program grant funds. Be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors, headquartered at 711 North Bridge Street, Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, 54729, hereby authorizes Matt Hansen, Chippewa County Forest Administrator, to act on its behalf to submit an application to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources for financial assistance under the Stewardship Program for the Wilson Acquisition Project, to sign documents, and to take action necessary to undertake, direct, and complete an approved stewardship program. Be it further resolved that Chippewa County recognizes and acknowledges the long-term ownership and management responsibilities of the stewardship program, will comply with all stewardship laws and regulations, and will meet its obligations under the grant and management contract for the project.
Okay, so just a quick explanation here. This came up very quickly, and because of a timing matter, unfortunately, LCFM does not meet until tomorrow, I believe, and next month's full board meeting would be too late to try to capitalize on this. So because it was not voted on at committee, I'm going to need a suspension of the rules, which will require a 2/3 vote. So the first motion I'd be looking for is for a suspension of the rules to take up the 1126.
Later, so moves.
Erickson, second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor to suspend the rules. Does anyone have any questions about this? Would not be questions about the resolution itself. It'd be questions about suspension of the rules to consider the resolution. And it will require 2/3 vote. Supervisor Isold. Oh, sorry. Okay. Supervisor Bomar? Nope. Damn, okay.
They were just really excited.
All right. Yes. All right, if we have no questions, we will vote on suspension of the rules to hear the resolution. All right, 18 yes, 0 no. Rules have been suspended. Now I'd look for a motion to approve Resolution 1126.
Kelly makes that motion.
Possible second.
We have a motion and a second. Matt, please bring us up to speed.
I apologize. The DNR was telling me that they were oversubscribed in the KN program because it's expiring, right? The state legislature is not reauthorizing KN. So every conservation organization, every county, everybody out there who uses these funds was beaten down the door to get their projects in. And they told me, don't apply. We've got too many subscriptions. There was a paper company that was selling off land and not telling a county that they were doing that. And it ended up with the failure of that project. What I've learned is that I need to get in the queue even when I don't think I'm gonna win. Because then we wouldn't be here.
What questions do we have about the project and the grant application? Supervisor Bomar.
As a note, this is on tomorrow's agenda for land conservation. So
We'll be bringing it back to you. This is authorization for me to apply for that funding. It is not the authorization to purchase the land. That will come back to you after it goes through proper process and the committee. If I don't do it now, the state cannot get their 30-day notice out to the towns in order to get authorization from them to proceed with the application. So I didn't figure out that Jason, as chair, could put this on the agenda by himself, we wouldn't be able to do it. But I looked for every option because it's 50% funding. And I think this is a land acquisition that we want. It's surrounded on three sides by county property, and every indication from my committee at this point has been that we want to make this acquisition. If we don't in the end, that's fine. But you guys will have authorized yourselves to save yourself 50% of the purchase.
Do we have any other questions? Hearing none, we'll call the vote. Yes, 0 no. Resolution 1126 is passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair,
Supervisor Erickson.
I think mine's malfunction. I never pressed the button.
You had to.
Press the button.
Too late now.
No,
You're good.
I'm voting yes. I just want to let you know that mine,
You ever say number 8 on the back?
pardon,
We will check into it.
check that also.
We'll check for a virus.
You don't have to vote anymore tonight, you're good.
Yes. We'll file a ticket. All right, we will move on then to number 8, that is reports. Reports, Chippewa Valley Health Cooperative request for $10 million loan from Wisconsin Board of Commissions of Public Lands to help finance the interim Chippewa Valley Cooperative Hospital in Chippewa Falls. Andy, would you like to just set the stage here first, please?
Thanks, Chairman. So, yeah, I thought just to spend a minute to recap, kind of the letter that was in your board packet does some of that already. Actually, the board heard a presentation from the cooperative last summer, if I recall, and then the executive committee heard a more formal presentation in November for requesting the $10 million loan. So what they're asking for is for the county to borrow from the state trust fund loan and relend it to them for their start of their operations here in Chippewa Falls with Community Hospital. Since the November meeting, we did a couple things. One was just looking at, how, can we do the borrowing? How would that work? We worked with our bond advisor on whether we could do a bond or a state trust fund loan. And the recommendation is if you wanted to do this, that we work with the state trust fund loan. We also had discussions with the cooperative about the feasibility study, which the county approved funding in 2024 to support, the recovery of healthcare in the community. We did line up, it took a little bit, but we did line up another firm to take a look at the feasibility study. But really that brought to the question of why would we pay another firm to look at a feasibility study that we've already helped fund? And so the cooperative is sharing tonight with you the feasibility study that they conducted. It was in your packet, and I expect that they'll be explaining that tonight. Other discussions have been about looking for comparable facilities in Wisconsin or in the country that would be similar to what they're proposing to start here. And I'll just tell you that there really isn't one, because there is not, we've been able to find another cooperative model starting a new independent hospital. We can provide examples of independent hospitals, but the specific model and structure and environment that they're starting one here really is one-off. I joked with Mike that every time I look for another model, it just leads me back to the Chippewa Valley Health Cooperative. And then also we've had some discussions on, what would be the benefit to the county outside of the county government. We have self-insurance here. There are direct contract possibilities with the hospital should they start to provide health care for our members. And the short answer is yes, there are, but it's still been a little preliminary. We've shared information with the cooperative on what services our employees are using in other facilities. So we're still working through that. But, we're here tonight so that they can, I guess, present to the full board, give you the full presentation. This has taken a little while. I think their plans have become more defined, maybe through the benefit of time. But the plan is to let them present to you tonight, to the full board. Ask them questions, please. This is your opportunity to get as much information out of this as you can. And then the plan would be to have most likely, I'm thinking it's looking like a special meeting in June for you to deliberate and make a determination of whether or not you want to support their request for funding and how that might look. So it could be the regular June board meeting, but that agenda is fairly full already. So we'll see how this goes tonight, and the chair and I will talk about how to proceed in the next month here. But please, ask as many questions as you can so you can get a good feel for what they're intending to do. I'll turn it over to Mr. Krause.
Thank you, and thank you.
1 second.
I'm sorry.
I was concerned about, we have a lot of standing people. Is there any way that we could get at least some chairs up along here and to help accommodate some of the folks?
I can go see. We try to keep the numbers down for fire code. I'll go see if we can accommodate some chairs tonight.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to come before the board and talk. And before I go on with my introduction, thank you, Dennis. I don't know where you are. I just met Dennis tonight, and thank you very much. Everything you said is why I volunteered 26 months ago. So thanks for those words. I'm Bob Krause. I live in the town of Sampson in Chippewa County, and I'm a member of this board, which represents our Chippewa Valley Health Cooperative. There's 9 of us, 6 lay people, half retired, half still working, and then 3 physicians. One of our board members, I should announce, Patty Darley, was supposed to be here tonight, but she became ill, and she's online, so I don't know if there's a camera, but hi, Patty. The closure of the hospitals, both in Chippewa and Eau Claire, is what we responded to. It is a healthcare crisis across the Chippewa Valley. And in response to the patients that were abandoned, community leaders, local physicians, employers, and residents, we came together to form a health cooperative. The cooperative today looks different than it did back in February of '24. We are a community-governed nonprofit organization. We have more than 1,500 members. I never thought about using this. Tracy gave it to me. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, we have more than 1,500 members. And that includes individuals and physicians and other professionals. We achieved 501c3 status, which means any monies that we receive are tax deductible on someone's tax return. And since we started, we've raised over $14 million in both pledges and donations. We're trying to work right now with local employers so we can help lower healthcare costs, and I know Andy had referred to that. We're mission-driven. I don't know how you can operate all these buttons. We're mission-driven, and our mission is simple: to build a new model of high-quality, low-cost healthcare governed by the community. We were real concerned that if we started a hospital, we wanted to make sure the governance stayed here and didn't, and the decisions weren't made out of town someplace. So that's what we started to do. We've come a long way, and thanks to you, that first grant you issued us, that's a major reason why we're here today, because you helped us get established and get a foothold, and we've done a lot. It's been a lot of work, but it's been a good, rewarding work for the patients who were abandoned. And now, I'll turn it over to Mike Sanders.
Thanks, Rob. Yep. Take 1 minute. They've got chairs here, Chairman. Okay. Oh, I can help. Well, while they're doing that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Mike Sanders.
Right in front of that other projector.
I am the CEO of Chippewa Valley Health Cooperative. My permanent residence is in Monroe, Wisconsin, a town of 11,000 in southern Wisconsin. My semi-permanent residence is Chippewa Falls, where I rent a house and spend a lot of time here with my dog, Barry. I know there are a lot of Lions fans here. Barry Sanders? Not quite. Okay. I knew that wouldn't go over well. All right. So we have 3 or 4 of us going to talk today. And I think if you have clarifying questions on a slide or talking, raise your hand and we'll try to answer that. And we want to have a lot of time at the end to go into depth into whatever part of our presentation or our plans that you want to. And we are very appreciative of this opportunity. So, we lost this. Let's see. Maybe it's the same cyber issue that made everybody vote yes without trying. I don't know. Well, we'll get there. I'll start. I can see what I need to say. So for us, and I think for many of you, the need is clear. When the closures happened a little over 2 years ago, about 1/3 of the regional hospital capacity disappeared. So the region lost emergency services, obstetric services, critical care, cancer care, surgery, cardiology, and inpatient beds. And we know, because we've heard many stories, and I'm sure you know from your friends and colleagues, or maybe personal experiences, residents now face long transport times for emergency care, delays in care because of overcrowded facilities, reduced local access, referrals out of town for specialty services, more out-migration, and higher costs. So there's implication of this shortage in the healthcare outcomes of the community and costs for individuals and employers. In the Chippewa County Access to Care report from, okay, we're good.
I think it's working.
All right, thanks, Tracy. The best. This is from September of 2025. Talks about these gaps from County Access report. And we're here to say we're going to help close these gaps, and we're committed to serve the entire community, Medicare, Medicaid, insured patients with a full-service community hospital. So we've done a lot since we talked to the executive committee back in November. Cancer care and infusion services opened in October of 25, and we're now seeing over 400 patients a month, and that's growing every month. So the need is clear, and the data supporting that and the patient access is an issue that we're trying to resolve. That program's generating over $500,000 a month in revenue. So the sustainability, we feel good about that. Wound care opened more recently in January, and now that program is averaging over 250 patients a month. So we know and we hear it from patients, when are you going to be able to do more? When is OB going to be available? When is more inpatient and critical care going to be available? We reopened the services. The morgue was closed when the hospital was closed, and when we acquired the former St. Joe's Hospital, we were able to reopen the morgue and save the county money. It's not millions of dollars, but it reduced travel time for county staff and reduced rentals, and we provide this to no charge for the county and are committed to continue to do that. We've also done EMS training at the facilities in the conference rooms, and we appreciate, as Bob mentioned, your support early on in this process, and more recently, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, which actually funded us with a planning grant, and more recently has indicated they're going to fund us a grant for equipment coming up. So in addition, we have multiple tenants on the 5th floor of the hospital. This is actually a space that we weren't going to use, but when it was announced that we were going to own the hospital, we got a number of inquiries from health organizations that aren't part of us, but we're looking for space. And so that's helped us in terms of people in the building, paying a little bit rent for the utilities and being able to be of service to the community. We're working with Lina Health out of the Twin Cities for the electronic health record. And this is actually the most complicated and the time-limiting step in getting the hospital open. You cannot be a hospital without electronic health record. Epic is the gold standard, and we're working with Alina to implement Epic. The implementation period is about a year, and you really can't make it go faster. And so we're appreciative of that partnership with Alina, and they've been very, very supportive of our work. We are working on developing a hiring infrastructure because we will be hiring 300 to 400 people once the hospital is fully opened. And it's amazing, the day we announced that we had purchased the former St. Joe's Hospital, we put a little spot on our website, said if you're interested, we're not hiring now, but if you're interested in learning about when we are hiring for jobs, put your name, contact information, what department, your certification, license, whatever that is. As of last week, the number of people that are on that list is 988. I'm sure it's over 1,000 by now. So one of the questions we've heard from bankers and other people, well, healthcare, it's hard to hire. Where are you going to get these people? We have hundreds and hundreds of people that are waiting for us to say, okay, come on in for an interview and let's get started and get this place reopened. So we feel very good about that. For the future, again, we're going to be a full-service community hospital. And I know many of you are familiar with the St. Joe's that closed 2 years ago. Some of the services had been diminished because HSH just moved things to Eau Claire and centralized some things at Sacred Heart. Those things are coming back. So we will be doing OB. We'll have full service, critical care, emergency department, surgery, and inpatient beds, and various specialties, services. Oncology is already there, orthopedics, GI, urology, cardiology. So it won't be reopening what St. Joe's was when it closed. It'll be a much more extensive scope of services for the community. So we are no longer a concept. We're different than we were when we last talked to you. And we're different from really almost anything else in the country. As Andy said, look, there are many community hospitals, many independent community hospitals who are doing great. Many of them are in Wisconsin. So the idea of an independent hospital being financially strong and successful is not, that's not a new concept. There aren't cooperative-owned hospitals. There are cooperative clinics. Group Health Cooperative in the Madison area is a very successful organization, but there aren't specific cooperative-owned hospitals. So we are locally owned, as Bob said. Our 1,500 members select our board. To be a member, you have to live in our service area. To be on the board, you have to be a member. So it's local governance. Decisions will never be made out of town. So we've kind of proof of concept and demand with some of the services we've already started. We have a very strong physician partnership with many of the independent physicians in the community, and that really is the core of a hospital, the physicians that are working with the team on site to take care of patients. And we have pretty much all specialties covered, and the physicians have been a part of the planning. The physicians are not owners. We get that question sometimes. The physicians are not owners. We are a nonprofit owned by the community and the members, but they're very strong partners in helping make this happen. We've also had extensive conversations with employers who want better healthcare solutions. There are concerns about healthcare costs. This is a very high-cost area in the state and even in the country. And we know we can provide better options to employers, and of course, the county is a major employer in Chippewa County. So we've done a lot in terms of community funding. As Bob mentioned, we've raised over $14 million in cash and pledges, which has given us a great start. We have operation plans in place to reopen the hospital. We've had an expert team working in areas like surgery, nursing, lab, imaging. So we have the game plan in place. And the remaining gap is some financing that will get us over the top so we can get the doors open as soon as possible. And we're very close to restoring a full-service hospital here in Chippewa Falls in a way that hasn't occurred for many, many years. So why do we think we're going to succeed? And we get this question a lot, particularly at the beginning. You know, if a big system couldn't make this work, how do you think you're going to be successful? Well, one, as Bob started right off, decisions are made locally, and we just can't hammer that enough. This is a true community hospital with local board members, local decision-making. We will also be accountable to the community through our cooperative members who will be electing the leaders. We also pledge transparency in terms of pricing and financial results to our members so people know how we're doing. There's no, everything will be upfront for people to see. There won't be corporate overhead allocated that you can't tell where that's going. In terms of how we're going to operate, we have a team and working with the physicians and board, we're going to be a very lean organization. By lean, I don't mean bare-boned or skimpy. We're just going to take those things out of the system that are wasteful or slow things down or add time to the process. So we'll have no corporate headquarters to make decisions. All decisions will be made here in town. We'll have a lower overhead in terms of administrative staff and management team. We're going to be able to make decisions faster. And we're going to focus on quality and efficient operations. And that's our work. And I encourage you, the board members, if you haven't had a chance to read that one page, like an editorial opinion that was in the beginning that talks about, it's a national healthcare leader saying, maybe bigger isn't better, and talks about the issues with systems. And when I saw that, that just out a couple weeks ago, well, I read a lot of that stuff. This is the first time I've ever seen someone on the national stage raise that question. Like, maybe we got a problem here with big systems, or they're not all they're cracked up to be. Those of us who work in the field see it all the time, but the lemming approach in healthcare is bigger is better, the assumption, and these systems get bigger and bigger, and decisions are made farther and farther away from patients and communities. And we're going to turn that around. Physician engagement is key for us. It's a critical factor. We have strong working relationships with the independent medical staff, and you'll hear more about that later. Physicians are actively involved in leadership and planning as board members and volunteers, helping us think through various operations. Also, we are not going to be owning physician practices. So if you dive in deep to some of the HSHS things, you can see that the hospital supported all the Prevea clinics in town, or many of them, some of that overhead, and that was a drain on the hospital finances. We're actually going to be a traditional old school hospital. We're going to be a hospital, and the physicians are going to take care of the clinic work, and we're going to work in partnership for those services that are provided in the hospital. And we've also received significant philanthropic support from the physicians. They've given and pledged over $6 million directly. And again, this is not an investment. It's a check out of their back pocket as a charitable contribution to help the cooperative be successful. And then they're also helping us with some other long-term financial support to help make this go. We've also had lots of discussions with employers about direct contracting opportunities. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And price transparency, what we hear from all the employers here, or really throughout the valley, we're paying too much. We not sure we're getting the value we think we're getting. Why are things a lot less in other communities than they are here? We have no leverage, and we're offering an opportunity to sit down with employers and talk about direct contracting as best we can, cutting out middlemen, the middle organizations that cost money to deal with transactions, and we're trying to simplify that process. Now, that is easier said than done, and it takes willing parties to do that, but we're very excited about the potential from the discussions we've had with the employers. And we have employers sitting on our board that basically we talk about that issue almost every board meeting. So it's going to be a key part of our success and our ability to keep costs low by not having dozens and dozens of people where their only job is to process an insurance company or insurance billing. Not that that's not important work, it is, but it shouldn't take that much of healthcare resources to track that down. So the employer alignment's important. We're going to be focused on reducing healthcare cost growth, and all of our dollars of revenue are going to be reinvested in this community. None are going to go out of town. And this is all public record. You can dive into Medicare cost reports and see that in the last year of operations, the HSHS hospitals paid $50 million to Springfield, Illinois for corporate services. We are the corporate right here. There is no corporate entity elsewhere. So I'm going to turn it over now to Mickey Judkins to talk a little bit about the economic impact.
This one? Right, okay. All right, now that I have my computer understanding. Good evening. I'm Mickey Judkins. I own Details, a small business, and I'm one of the board members. And I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy spring schedule to do this extra meeting on your schedule. I've served on lots of committees, and I know what it takes, and it says a lot that you're all here to listen and to guide your community forward. So tonight you're hearing a lot of information from a lot of different points of view, and we will continue to give you that information. And, you know, I think it's a lot coming at you at once. And for many families, until they have someone that has a medical emergency and goes to the hospital, you don't realize that we have a problem. And so as I became involved in this 26 months ago with Bob, and the small group of us got together, said, what are we going to do with this? We realized it was something that was too important not to work on. And so we're here tonight because we need you. We need your help. We can't do it without you. And so we're here to explain to you what we've done over the last 26 months. We think it's a good plan. We think it will be a successful plan, and we have lots of input from Wifley and some others that you actually helped finance to talk about that. But as you know, and according to your plan, the most important challenge that we face is the access to affordable, high-quality healthcare in our community. And, you know, I'm the one that I've said before, I'm the one that gets angry on the board because I just think we can do better than this. How can this be? And let me just give you a few examples. And some of them you cited in your community health assessment. But, you know, citizens are being denied care, and they're traveling long distances for treatment. Cancer care may be delayed. And some patients, they say, well, go to La Crosse, go to Rochester. Some patients can't afford to stay in a hotel and do that, or they're too sick to go there 5 days. And you've probably seen a few press releases about that. At the Prevea Cancer Clinic, there was an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper on the door that said, sorry, this clinic is closed. Now, all of us have had cancer touch our families. And that team is your lifeline. So imagine when you go to the door and you see that the team that you've relied on to take your numbers and make sure that things are okay are gone. And that's what a lot of people are still experiencing. It didn't go away once HSHS left. People are still dealing with that. Ambulance services are delayed. The head of the EMT described the other day that once in a while over the last few years, they'd have to pull over to deliver a baby. And he said, you know, it's happening a lot more now. Now think about that. You're coming from Rice Lake and you've got to deliver a baby on the side of the road. Or someone that I was talking to said, oh, you don't have to tell me, Mickey, my best friend was just diverted last night to the Twin Cities. And they were fine, they made it. But I said, you know, there's a lot of empty road between here and there when you're in labor. And we used to have 14 places to deliver babies. And since, you know, we have a lot of big systems, you do an analysis and you decide that's not profitable, and 12 of those have closed. Only 2 exist. And it's my understanding that it's happening because child delivery is not a profit center. And you've got to offset that. You have to run your organization so that some things make profit and some things cost you money. But you don't give up delivering your babies at home. So if you travel north, the only delivery room between here and Duluth is Hayward. All the others have closed. It's a long journey when you're in labor. And then you arrive, and is there a guarantee that there's room for you? So in my mind, this is wrong. Babies need to be delivered in their hometowns, surrounded by loved ones. And we plan to restore those services. And there are excellent OBs in the room tonight, and they've delivered probably babies of your families. So the ER has 5 to 15-hour waits, and the hallways and the ambulance garage have been converted into ER treatment centers. Dr. Dixon, Eric Dixon, could not be here tonight, but many of you probably know him. He worked in the ER at St. Joe's for many years. His parents headed up EMT, which is a volunteer job, and then when he was 16, he started becoming an EMT. So to me, what that dictates is it's been a life of service. And he's on our board, and so when he came one night, he was very concerned, and he was concerned about deep wound care and the lack of hyperbaric chambers in the community. And there's only one, and it's at Mayo. And the wait is 4 to 6 weeks. And so he explained that when you don't get treatment in a timely fashion, the result is more amputations. So they remove the limb to save the body. And especially in nursing homes, the number of amputations have increased. And, you know, even talking about it makes me angry. It's unacceptable. But I'm happy to report that we just brought back 2 hyperbaric chambers back online at St. Joe's, which will increase the capacity by 300%. So you have to ask yourself the question, what happens if we don't do this? Where do you go for an emergency in the middle of the night? Will they have space for you? Where do the mothers and the projected 700 babies that are going to come over the next year, where are they delivered? And who is your medical team through cancer? And who will provide deep wound care to prevent an increase in amputations? And where do the counties who are struggling with 20% increases and the employers negotiate fair rates for their self-funded health care? Or do we leave that for the next generation of leaders? There are so many reasons to support this project. One, it's aligned with your strategic plan. The hospital will improve access to care. It'll reduce patient time, and many times that is critical time. You know, someone was in the ER for 13 hours with an aneurysm. And I said, oh, Mark, some people don't have 13 hours. He said, I know. And it will also attract and retain the top medical talent that we have. We've got about 100 doctors and other healthcare professionals who are committed to working at the hospital. And frankly, that's our secret sauce. We have the doctors. And as you know, there's a national shortage. And they come with 55,000 regional patients. So they come with their patients that they will refer to your hospital. And we need the facility for them, and we need funding. So with this national shortage, we don't want to be trying to recruit rural doctors and nurses and technicians. We have them. And as Mike said, we have almost 1,000 people looking for a job at this facility. And the economics of losing just one doctor is extensive. How does that impact the community? We've lost a few. But as a person with economic development background, I worked in Madison for the governor in economic development. I ran the county, Eau Claire County Economic Development. I'm really worried about the economic impact if we keep losing these professionals. We could experience an economic downturn if we continue to lose these people. And then there's the employers. They need affordable health care, and the rates have skyrocketed. One employer, he's in the room, and he's happy to answer questions tonight also, is Eric Riggs of Silver Springs Gardens. I'm sure you've all had his mustard and horseradish. But he self-insures 250 families. And he was telling me a story about they get to see their cost of their bill. I don't get to see mine until it's there, and I just like, oh. But he gets to see the bid, and his local bid was $120,000. He got it done in Minneapolis for $60,000, and that included meals and a week in the hotel for his family. And so, you know, as you look at this and you say, what happens as people say, where should we expand? Where should we grow our business? You do it where the healthcare is this high? And the RAND report in a recent Madison study, the Crow study, has said that Wisconsin has the 4th highest expensive healthcare rates in the nation. And the Chippewa Valley is one of the most expensive in the country. So, and rates in other communities can be up to 40% cheaper. So that kind of forces these employers to look at those options to balance their budget. So you have to ask yourself, will these businesses expand in the Chippewa Valley with these high healthcare rates? Can we stop the out-migration of patients with more affordable healthcare? I think we need to create some real competition to drive down costs with no legacy costs and smaller administrative costs. You know, I follow Becker's, which is a healthcare daily newspaper. And one of the things that you start seeing as systems start trying to deal with the expense is they start cutting administrative layers. And we won't have those big administrative layers. It's very hard once you have that type of structure to downsize it. We will build it without that and a smaller, and we don't have a Rochester or a Springfield that we have to send 50 million to. Our profits will be reinvested locally. So that should help us stabilize the local tax basis. And we asked Central Wisconsin Regional Planning, you probably all work with, and Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation to run some reports. And they looked at the 1,511 jobs that we lost and the 98.3 million in lost wages and 2.4 in lost county revenue tax and 28 million in lost government tax revenue. It's a lot of ground to cover. We have to address it. So the WIDA regional rep, Ray French, analyzed the EDPORts, the economic development reports by WIDA and regional planning. And I said, Ray, what does this mean? Tell me what all this numbers, these pages and pages and pages of numbers mean. He goes, it means that this is a project of this size that only comes to a community once every 5 to 10 years. This is a huge economic opportunity. So the hospital creates jobs both during construction and in ongoing operations, as well as providing the secondary benefits through increased local business activity. We need to embrace the vision of shifting healthcare paradigm to be patient-centric rather than profit-driven. We need to have a vision that provides real competition that will start to drive down costs and not drive up bankruptcies. We have an opportunity to reset the trajectory of healthcare in our region by addressing the shortages of access to care as well as reducing costs. This project will create a $40 million annual payroll and employ more than 400 healthcare workers, as well as retaining many of our displaced healthcare workers. Additionally, we have commitments, as I said, for over 100 doctors to work and restore their practices to full capacity. And remember, the loan that you're co-signing, all interest and principal will be paid for by the cooperative. We're not asking you to lay out cash. We're asking you to put your faith behind us and stand with us. So please envision new healthcare services in your community and all the secondary businesses growing out, families cared for in their community, and the supply of healthcare professionals secured. Your decision will have an impact on this community for decades. This is a transformational project, and we've put a lot of the pieces together, and we'll continue to tell you about those pieces. But we need your help. We need you to join the team and share the vision. We're asking you to partner with us on this community investment with long-term returns. So by co-signing this loan, you're not just supporting the hospital. You're investing in healthier families, stronger local businesses, and a future where the community thrives. I'm asking you to vote to support our efforts and meet this healthcare challenge and embrace this shared opportunity. I'm confident that together we can see a future that secures our community's access to care and strengthens our economy. Thank you.
Thanks, Mickey. And I'd like to introduce Steve Little, our Chief Financial Officer, and Steve's going to talk a little bit about the financial implications, the feasibility study, and risk mitigation for the county. So Steve's our numbers guy, so get your hard questions out right now.
So as Mike mentioned, my name is Steve Little. I do not live in Chippewa or Eau Claire. I live in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, where I've existed since 2002. I was at Ignesian Healthcare for 18 years until the Sisters of St. Agnes decided that they didn't have enough money to live the rest of their lives on it, and they sold Monroe Clinic and Ignesian in 2018. Since then, I've been doing contract work and helping others. This project is meaningful to me, not because I needed another job, but I believe in the purpose and what you're trying to accomplish here. So your risk is this, is that if we, the cooperative, are unsuccessful and unable to pay this debt back, you, as a county, get to write a check to repay it. And so what's going to mitigate that? First of all, I commit this. We will not draw a dollar of funds on this $10 million request until the entire project is funded. In other words, the remaining dollars. In the Whipley report, you will see that they initially projected that $60 million was there. That has been substantially reduced over time in that we look at opening the hospital on a smaller scale versus a larger scale and incrementally growing into that. So ultimately, our need today is the 14 million we've raised, the 10 million from you, and then another 20 million from others that will either donate money and or guarantee commercial financing for us. And oh, by the way, a number of the folks in the Oak Leaf Medical Network have stepped forward to help us with that in a very significant way. So for me, it's not on the slide as it relates to to risk, but there is a bullet there that says physician-supported financing commitments in place. Many of the doctors in this room today have committed to help us with that. For me, that was one of the most monumental steps in this, because if you don't have a physician community behind you in some way, either tied to your system through employment or partnership, then you're going to struggle to be successful. We have that with the Oak Leaf Medical Network doctors at the clinic, Oak Leaf clinics, and others. And it's the key to our success. So remind you that you have no operational responsibility. That's for Mike to take care of and his team. Again, none of the funds will be drawn on until the entire project funds are raised. We aren't building a new facility today. I think there's a lot of misconception out there, because initially when the board was formed, Bob and company, Penny, I saw you. That's the reason I came with that. When they formed the board, they looked at building a new hospital at a new greenfield site. Well, today that's off the table. You're not guaranteeing a loan that's going to fund that. You're guaranteeing a loan that's going to fund our ability to open the doors. And so we're not building a new hospital. We have a hospital that's very capable. I worked at Holy Family Memorial Hospital in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, which should have been shut down probably 20 years ago. St. Joseph's Hospital, the former St. Joseph's Hospital, is the Taj Mahal compared to Holy. Anybody been to Manitowoc, Wisconsin before and been in the trust me. I walked in St. Joe's, the former St. Joe's, and went, wow, this is fantastic. We can make this work. So we're not building a new facility. Physician supported, an independent third party. You hired them, you paid for them. Whipley, okay, which is a well-known organization in this valley and around the state of Wisconsin, prepared a financial projection. Like any financial projection, you all can sit and poke holes and question that, and what about this, and what about this, and there's a lot of assumptions in there of which I believe are conservative, and the numbers work. Okay, they've changed a little bit since this was prepared, but they work. So with that, know that the last piece of this is that as we move forward, and we continue to raise funds, because there are people that are still in the wings waiting to potentially donate to this, but they want to see us get our doors open. And if we can get our doors open, I think there is some philanthropic charitable donations that will come to the cooperative, which will then be used to repay debt in a more expedient fashion than what we commit to. So that's a fantastic thing. And then lastly, once we have a proven track record, we will be able to go out to the public markets and do revenue bond financing once we have 5 to 6 to 7 years worth of experience behind us, which can take this loan out as well. So with that, I think we have Amanda from Whitley somewhere on the line or on the phone.
She's on the phone, speakerphone.
So, and so we're here. The next piece of this, and we can advance the slide, is the Whitley projections. And I'm not there's 30 plus pages of that, and I'm not going to go through it, but basically it shows positive cash flow, growing our cash reserves, and a net margin within a very short period of time. So, any questions at this point in the journey as it relates to the Whitley projections or the financial statements? You got off easy, Amanda, as well as I did.
Thank you.
One last chance. Okay. Thank you very much. Next up, Dr. Thapar.
Thank you. My name is Kamal Thapar. I'm a neurosurgeon here in Eau Claire. After hearing the gentleman who started his speech talking about his illnesses and his friends' illnesses, I think that my presentation is probably superfluous. because there's nothing I can say that's more heartfelt than what that gentleman said. I thank you for your courage to stand up in your community, stand up for your community, and I wish more people would be doing that. I want to begin by asking a very simple question. And it's a question that really should not have to be asked in 2026. Is the Chippewa Valley a safe place to get sick? After being a neurosurgeon, after being here for 23 years as a neurosurgeon, my answer, sadly, is no. You've heard about the economic impact studies, the projections, feasibility studies, and the effort to resurrect this this hospital in Chippewa Falls. And those are plans and projections and possibilities for what can be. But I'm here to speak from a different place. I'm here to talk to you of what actually is. I'm here to talk to you from the front lines of healthcare, where the consequences are immediate, irreversible, and deeply personal to me. You have to understand that I am speaking to you not as an outsider looking in. I've had a clinic here in Chippewa Falls for many years. I've cared for patients at St. Joseph's Hospital, and I'm a proud disciple of the late David Fish, former CEO of St. Joseph's Hospital, a leader and a friend who believed deeply in community-based care. Chippewa Falls has always cared for its own, until those facilities were taken away. Dave understood what we are rediscovering the hard way. When healthcare leaves a community, part of the community dies with it. I also want to disabuse you about one other comment that Mickey had brought up about the cost of healthcare. And I want to make it very, very clear that the cost of healthcare, the elevated costs that we are confronting, and why this is the fourth highest healthcare cost in the community, it's not because of the physicians. It's because of the cost of the hospital. It's the cost of the insurance companies. It's the cost of all of those other things except for the doctors. I want to make that very, very clear. And if it's the only thing you remember from this tonight, please remember that. The problem is many physicians are just too peevish to tell the truth because they don't want to talk about the financial aspect of it. But this is absolutely true. It's the corporate medicine that is consuming everything. And every one of the healthcare companies that have parachuted into this community, these corporations that have their CEOs and offices in some other state, they all came to you with the promise, we're going to reduce the healthcare costs. They never did. They only led to elevation in these costs. That's my brief editorial, and I will move on. You know, one of the things is that not all Americans experience emergency health care in the same way. There are really two different Americas. There is a rural disadvantage that exists here. Now, we've chosen to live in this community, the rural community, but there is a definite disadvantage that exists. In 2017, there was an important study that talked about the EMS response time. And it says that 7 minutes is the national median average overall, and in urban centers. It's 14 minutes in rural response times. And it's nearly 1 in 10 rural calls will wait more than 30 minutes before an ambulance arrives. So we often talk about this, but we say, you know, we've chosen to live in this community, so we'll accept this. But things have gotten worse since 2017. In 2025, the picture's gotten substantially worse, and they analyzed 69 million EMS calls over a 2-year period after COVID. And instead of just looking at the EMS response times, they were looking at the scene, how long it took to get to the response, how much time they were on the scene, and how long the transport time was. And these numbers are important. They may not seem significant to you right now, but in a moment you'll understand why. The average time in rural medicine to accomplish those 3 steps is 93 minutes versus 74 minutes in more urban areas. And the other thing that's there is that the patients in rural communities are much sicker when the EMSs are called. 40% of rural EMS activations are high acuity compared to 26% in urban areas. So the emergencies that we see in the Chippewa County are not the same as the emergencies that we see on Park Avenue in New York. A farming accident is not a Botox injection gone wrong. Our patients arrive broken. They're not just merely inconvenienced. So, but the problem still is that this data assumes, and what every researcher, every study, every statistic assumes and takes for granted, is that at the end of the ride, you're at a hospital. We don't have that. Every one of these numbers, already alarming for rural communities across America, becomes catastrophic when the destination for those ambulances doesn't exist. When the ambulance arrives, you should be thankful, but you should be concerned because there's no place for that ambulance to go. This is the Chippewa Valley today. Now, let me begin with a scenario that should absolutely unsettle every single person in this room. What would happen if somebody in this room right now had a stroke? Certainly, say, collapsed to the floor, unable to speak, paralyzed, slipping into unconsciousness. This is not an uncommon scenario. After all, it happens every 40 seconds in this country. And by the way, when I talked about how many minutes it takes, I want you to understand that for every minute, 2 million brain cells die. So the delay in either the arrival of the ambulance or the finding of a destination can be the absolute difference between survival and death. And you know what? It can be worse than death because there are things that are worse than death. That is, loss of independent living and living for the rest of your life in institutionalized care. So there are some serious implications that on the time frame of minutes means a lot. So let's say somebody in this room has a stroke. 911 is called, the paramedics arrive, and then we wait. Not for treatment, but we wait for a bed. Sometimes Mayo can accept here, but all too often the patients must be transferred elsewhere, as you've heard, to Rochester, Madison, Minneapolis, or beyond, because the capacity no longer exists in the Chippewa Valley. This is what our emergency room looks today. This is your scenic room, actually, sir, that you talked about. This is the ambulance garage at Mayo in 2025. And to be clear, and I want to be super clear because I don't want my words to be misconstrued. This is not a criticism of Mayo. To the contrary, Mayo has stepped forward and taken on an enormous regional volume and have done everything in their capacity to absorb a crisis that they didn't create. So their clinicians and administrators are to be absolutely commended for the tremendous work that they've done. But this image should not be misinterpreted somehow as innovation. How do you turn an ambulance garage into an acute care facility? You should look at it as evidence of a system that has run out of options, evidence of a system that has run out of capacity. It represents a strain that no community, no healthcare system should, however capable, should be expected to sustain indefinitely. Now, let me just take you back 25 years. If you had a stroke 25 years ago or 23 years ago, you would be taken to this facility, which happens to be at Sacred Heart Hospital. And there in this facility, there was a number of great physicians, one of which was Dr. Porter, only one of 125 physicians on the planet that was able to take blood clots out of your brain with small microcatheters. Not only were we the first in this region to deliver clot-busting drugs for stroke, we were the only facility in the region that could pass microcatheters into the brain. We were the only to retrieve clots. or treat aneurysms with minimally invasive approaches. We cared for patients locally. That's what we did. In fact, we were the referral destination. 23 years ago, we could care for our own. Today, without a hospital, we can't even meet our own standards of 23 years ago, of 2 decades ago. Can you imagine that? In fact, no hospital, none in this region could do what we were doing 23 years ago. If you need care today, you have to be transferred out of the Chippewa Valley. So this is not stagnation, this is regression. And the sad part of it is we are slowly being trained to accept mediocrity as being inevitable. Stroke by stroke, one compromise at a time, one delayed treatment at a time, one lost service at a time, one airlift transfer at a time. And every time we say, well, that's just the way things are. I bet you the people in Flint, Michigan, when they were turning on their water and getting that kind of poisonous water, you know, if you look at the history on that, they went to their community for a decade to tell them about the birth defects that were coming out, but nobody responded. So the real danger that we face is not shortage, it's psychological surrender that we inflict upon ourselves and we inflict upon our community. Here's another case. And I could just go on and give you case after case after case, but they're illustrative. And the gentleman did a much better job than I did because he was so personal about his situation. But here's another case. An 88-year-old female falls, has multiple spine fractures. A very simple procedure to correct this. It's called a vertebroplasty, and it can relieve pain instantly. She was admitted to only one of the 2 hospitals that we have left here. But the system was so overwhelmed that they couldn't care for her there, and they discharged her home and brought her back 8 days later for doing the vertebroplasty. So this lady suffered at home completely unnecessarily. This is not the standard of care that our community needs, and certainly not the elders in our community. Another example, one of my patients, 68-year-old female with a right parietal brain tumor that you can see here on the left-hand side of the screen. And, you know, she needed post-operative radiation. Unfortunately, her need for radiation timed perfectly when the cancer center closed here, as Mickey had mentioned. So she and her family had to drive to Madison every day for 35 treatments, nearly 400 miles per day, exhausted, nauseated, and ultimately dying. She eventually passed away. So now you have to ask yourself, how do we place a price tag on the final months of somebody's life spent on a highway instead of with the people she loved? So I could share many more stories like this from the front lines, but this is our daily reality. For 2 years, it felt like we've had a 5-alarm emergency, but the only people who can hear the alarm are the ones desperately needing care and the ones struggling to deliver it. Some emergencies are just simply silent to those not standing in the smoke. And tonight, I hope you can hear the alarm with us. So let me end where I began. If somebody in this room had a stroke tonight, where would they go? That question makes you uneasy? It should. We have gone backwards, but regression is not our destiny. Only acceptance makes it permanent. We can move forward again if we refuse to normalize decline and choose to rebuild care that matches the dignity of our people. The opposite of progress is not failure, it's accepting less. And tonight I speak on behalf of the cooperative as members of this community and voices for the vulnerable. We refuse to accept less, not for us, not for our patients, and not for our community. And one day, in the not too distant future, when you or someone else you love needs care, may the comfort you feel be the result of a decision made today in this room, a decision where resolve created resources, and not a future where the lack of resolve became the greatest resource we never had. Thank you.
So you can see why I love working with the board and advisors that we work with every week. The passion and energy and expertise, it's just a privilege for all of us to get a chance to do that. And I don't think Dr. Thapar knows that I'm from Flint, Michigan. My first community project when I was working on a graduate degree in public health at the University of Michigan was assessing housing stock in Flint, Michigan around lead paint quite a few decades ago. And I have family still in that community and surrounding area, and what happened there was a real tragedy. But anyway, so this is our specific request, and it's all in the details. Support for a $10 million loan to the county, passed forward to us. The county will be the conduit. We'll be responsible for payment. The details are, we're anticipating this would be a 10-year amortization note. The current interest rate on the BCPL website is 5.6% for a 10-year loan. And as Steve mentioned, there's a potential to convert this to a revenue-backed loan, which would be then on the cooperative's credit rating, not tied to the county anymore at that point. Additionally, we're going to keep investments local and jobs local. Mickey talked about that very effectively in terms of a $40 million impact in terms of salaries and benefits throughout the community. But more importantly, it's the community health and response to the crisis that while it was 2 years ago, it's still here every day, the impact of that crisis. So our path to reopening starts with council approval. This is the gap we need to finish the financing. As Steve mentioned, this will all be tied together where no dollars will be spent until all the resources are available to get us to the finish line. And we're working to put those together. After county approval, from our understanding, the state financing piece is a matter of 6 to 8 weeks to finalize that. We're also working on the balance of the additional financial commitments that we need in place. Much of those are secured, and I expect by the time we meet in a few weeks, the rest of that will be done. We're working frantically and very passionately to get that happen with strong support from philanthropic donors in the community and the independent physicians in terms of loan guarantees and financial support. So after that's in place, we'd work on the implementation. There are some things that still need to be done to the facility in terms of meeting Department of Health Services codes. So there's some minor renovation that still has to happen, not major investments, but it takes some time. We have the equipment orders ready to go. We've been talking with vendors for a long time. So while the facility is in pretty good shape, all the equipment that was on wheels left with HSHS, which makes sense. They took it and used it in other facilities. So there's a lot of replacement on equipment. We've talked about workforce. We're ready to go there. And as we get closer to starting time, then we can talk to continue our discussions and get to more of a final stage in terms of direct contracting with employers, including the county here. So in 2027 then, the EPIC electronic health record would be complete. Licensing would be in place. Hiring would be completed and onboarding. The ER would open. Inpatient services, surgery and specialty services would, some would be available at the start, some would be in a soon to follow, depending on fundraising and demand. So we have a game plan to get to full service very rapidly because that's what we see the need is. So as we mentioned, we've raised more than 14 million. We're working with primarily the physicians in terms of supporting financing commitments for another 20 million. And in addition to the positive vote from all of you, when you get a chance to do that, that would give us the numbers we need to push go and get things in place so we can hire, buy equipment, get the facility open and serve the community. So we are ready. We've got the facility. We've got services in place that have demonstrated very strong demand. We've got people ready to work. The demand is clear. So our ask is a yes when you get a chance to vote. Now, Mickey asked for that yes way more emphatically than I do, but I'm just the management guy. They're the passionate leaders. But that's what we need. We need your help to close the gap and get this done. When we were here in November, this was almost our first ask. We had some money, but we didn't have the rest of this plan in place. And we get the hesitancy back then, but now this is the last ask. This is the last thing we need to move forward. And other things we want to talk about today or in closed session or at a future session, we can save the county money. I was at your county board meeting last month or a few weeks ago and saw the $2 million plus increase in health benefit costs from 24 to 25. We can make a difference in that. Now, not all of that is hospital dollars because you spend money on pharmacy, variety of sources, but just a rough look at the dollars spent on hospital care, we think we can save at least $750,000 in terms of direct contracts. And that's what we would spend some time with details, and Andy's been very helpful working with your benefit folks to kind of get us exact numbers so we can put some fine details on that. But we're very optimistic. And this is the story we're telling to other employers too. We know Chippewa Valley does not have to be the highest cost area in the state. And we're gonna do our share to bring costs down and make them more cost effective for employers, which means families, and it means tax dollars, savings all around. Other areas we can work together, long-term mortgage agreement, we see that as a win-win for everybody there. We are committed to working with local contractors, local suppliers as much as possible. And we also offer transparency and accountability to the community. There's data on the Wisconsin Hospital Association website. Hospitals have to report limited financials, but some. The remaining full-service hospitals in our valley made tens of millions of dollars in additional profit the first year after these two hospitals closed. No board members know I'm going to say this, but I don't think any employer's got a rebate on their healthcare costs. We can help with that. So with that, we've got a lot of experts in the room, particularly physicians, employers in the back. What questions do you have? How can we help you understand our game plan? And before we conclude, the questions don't have to end today. If there's things you think of between now and the next meeting, get them to Andy, he can get them to us, and we'll get responses back.
What questions do we have for the group we have here tonight? Please use your remotes. Supervisor Hennick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've seen plans that I'm not sure are accurate, for you to build a new hospital in Lake County. Have those been abandoned? And is Sacred Heart, the old St. Joe, the new hospital, your future permanently?
Great question. If we go back in time, when all this occurred 2 years ago, as we were forming, we reached out to HSHS to see if one of the facilities would have been available for us to use at the time. And we were told no. They weren't available, weren't for sale. So we had no options. So we started to look at building as the only option. And so we worked on developing a site, and we have option on land in Lake Hallie. And we had at least a startup of a picture of what that hospital would look like and cost. Then about, well, it was November of 25, a year and a half later, HSHS came back to us and said, are you still interested in one of these hospitals? And so that we had to pivot. And no group has pivoted more than the board members of the Chippewa Valley Health Cooperative, as we've had various things that have confronted us. And so then we had to look at that as an option, and we decided to pursue that because we could get that hospital open much faster than the time it takes to build a new hospital. and less expensive, and we could begin to address the community healthcare gaps a lot quicker. So we pivoted to work on how do we get the hospital reopened. We still have the option on the land in Lake Hallie, and ultimately that may be our long-term plan, to build a new hospital at some location. There are some issues with the long-term viability of the physical plant at St. Joe's. So when we've been talking with the state about getting our license, they have given us a little bit of leeway on some things with the facility, particularly the energy efficiency does not meet current standards. And so at some point, there has to be major investments or a replacement facility. But our 100% focus now is getting the hospital reopened. And that'll be a decision that the board and community will make down the road in terms of the long-term hospital that we'll be working out of in locations. Does that help, Commissioner Hennick? Yeah.
Supervisor Shoebridge.
You mentioned about time and benefits. So this loan, how much faster do you have an estimate that you're able to start because of it? Or how much delay is going to have it if you don't get it?
It's hard to say because we're going to have to replace it from other sources, which is going to be gifts. So it's going to help us move at least a year faster. I mean, I don't know if any board members, the people that are working on campaigns, but it's a huge, huge positive impact in getting it to go faster.
Supervisor Isold.
You guys talk a lot about the departments that you will open and talk about people having to go to other locations to get services. And it seems like some of the services that you're offering, not that they're already taken care of, but there are in the area, and there's services that we don't have in this area. As a parent, there's a lot of adolescent services that we don't have. We don't have them at Mayo, we don't have them at Marshfield. Are you going to offer those things? Is that going to set you apart? What sets you apart from, I don't want to use the word basic, but being the basic hospital that, okay, I'm already established at Marshfield. Why would I want to come to your hospital when it's just already established?
And that's a great question, because there are people in the community who are established at Marshfield or Mayo, and they don't see the need in the same way as the 50,000 patients that are working with the independent physicians who now have no hospital, or they have to be transferred to a different physician to be admitted or transferred out of town. We have an obstetrics group that delivered about 800 babies at Sacred Heart. Other than a subset of that group, they don't have hospital privileges to deliver babies anywhere because of decisions made by health systems. And so our focus is on core community services that people are experiencing significant access issues or traveling out of town. Early on, we got a lot of questions about behavioral health issues. And with Rogers coming to the community, that's an incredible asset that will have huge benefits for the community, and have them here in Chippewa Falls is a great thing. We will be responsive to the community through our members, and so, there's really nothing off the table, but our focus is on these core services to start with. And I know we have some physicians in the room who are dealing with what to do with patients and where to go for services. If there's any comments on, looking at you, Dr. Detbarn or Dr. Longbella, in terms of OB.
Specialty sub-departments, I mean, some of these things, there are clinics that have already opened up, like wound care. There's a couple of them already in the area that have, taken on a lot of those patients just because the hospitals don't anymore. Not that it's oversaturated, but they fill in the gaps. I mean, there are some gaps here that we absolutely just don't have anymore because people have moved away. Sacred Heart is gone. We talk about the brain and spine. Is that your goal? Is that your long-term goal, is to bring something like that to the area? I mean, we show this big fancy department that we had in 2000.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Thapar is on our board of directors, and he was in that picture. He had a little more hair than he had Thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful question. And no, our goal is to first deliver basic services.
Right.
You know, so when I hear conversations like Mickey had mentioned about babies being delivered on the side of the road or amputation as a treatment of vascular disease, I feel like I'm being transported back to the Civil War. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to stabilize those kind of basic things. I agree with you that there are absolutely critical things like child psych, you know, behavioral health, like a metabolic clinic. We need those things. But what is, and those are not low-hanging fruit. Those are essential things, not just our community needs, but this is a nationwide epidemic. What we're talking about today is something as basic as an intensive care unit. So we have, so while we would like to be all things to everyone, there is no intensive care facilities in this city. There's one hospital that has an intensive care unit. That's completely insufficient. So one of the most common conversations that we have, you know, I was speaking with Dr. Cadess, one of the pulmonary doctors, and he said, you know, I had somebody who just was recently diagnosed with lung cancer, and I called over to try to get an appointment with oncology. They say come back in 4 months. Like that, I had never practiced medicine. So what you're saying is absolutely true. There is a wish list of essentials, of which child psych has always been on that. Adolescent medicine has always been on that. In terms of the hierarchy of what we need to deliver today, I wish that could be that. But right now, we just need to care for patients that are immediately dying. So your point is very, very well taken.
You know, and I think the other thing that in this situation that you really need to keep in mind is when you have a community-based, community-run hospital that's governed locally and it's run locally, you can prioritize what you think the community needs. And you're never going to get that from a big system. Okay? So what this does is that brings the power back to the community. And if the community at some point decides we need child psychiatric care, we are the entity that can provide that. Because the big systems are not going to get involved in anything that's going to hurt their bottom line. But the community feels that's a priority. That's something we can accomplish through this. And this is the only entity that you're going to be able to do that. And if we lose this and we decide that this isn't important enough, you'll never get this opportunity back. And that's the one thing that everybody in this room needs to keep in mind is this is the time for action. We have an opportunity here to make a huge difference. And if we don't step up as a community, we will never get this opportunity again.
Yes, go ahead.
I have many, but you talk about, you talk about what sets you apart from what failed last time. Do you know their failures? Do you 100% know their failures? And then if you had to cut or you had to make changes because you financially, your projections were wrong or you overprojected, do you know where your cuts would be? Because you look back at St. Joe's and you can see the cuts 4 and 5 years prior where they were cutting. And is that your baseline, or is that your, I guess, where you would follow in that? What sets you differently from them?
Well, I'll start, and then I'm going to ask Steve to jump in with comments. But we feel our projections are fairly conservative. So, for example, the 2 HSH hospitals, when they closed, their average midnight census, or patients in beds on an average day, was 122. What we're projecting at full occupancy in Chippewa Falls here is 27, only 1/4 of that volume. So we feel actually that we're going to be overwhelmed because we're not bringing back all of that capacity to work. And in terms of why we're different, the corporate overhead is a huge part, not supporting or subsidizing physician clinics, being independent of that. more transparency and directly working with employers, and our track record of our team in terms of process improvement that eliminates waste that doesn't add value to patients.
Do you own or are you assuming the Purveyor building across the street?
From from St. Joe's?
Yeah.
No, just St. Joe's Hospital. That's what we purchased effective July. And it's attached to the Marshfield Clinic, but Marshfield Clinic owns the Marshfield Clinic. So, yeah, no other buildings, just the hospital building.
Supervisor Rochelle.
Thank you, Chair. Have you looked at private lending as far as getting qualified for this final 10 million you're looking for?
Yes, we've looked at every type of lending, and essentially with traditionally hospitals are bond financed through the public markets, sell bonds and tax exempt bonds and things like that. And it's basically we're challenged there because we're a startup. We don't have, the first thing they say, can you send us your last 3 or 4 years financial results? Well, we don't have that. We have a team, we have a motivated physician partners, we have a plan and a facility, but the ability to go get traditional financing for something like this is really challenging. We've worked with experts at the state and national level. I don't know, Steve, you're in financing all the time on this stuff.
Yeah, so
It'll be an option for us down the road, but not today.
correct. And we are pursuing commercial financing today, but any commercial bank, financial institution, is only willing to borrow you money on a startup if there are guarantees from other entities that have the resources to repay the debt, or you've got assets to pledge. Well, we have St. Joseph's Hospital to pledge. You can debate on how much that's worth. So it's really a conundrum that and again, I'll repeat myself, we're very, very fortunate that the independent physician community in these 2 counties is behind this project, hence the reason they're here, but they've also put their pocketbooks behind this project and are assisting us in guaranteeing some commercial financing to bridge that gap between what you would do and what's necessary to get the hospital open.
What would that amount be?
So between the philanthropic resources, commercial financing's got to be about 20 million. County fills in 10, and then philanthropic fills in the rest. So you're a chunk of it, but know that you're not the majority of it.
All right, Supervisor Lotz.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't like the word co-signer because I don't believe that we should be a co-signer. And this is just the beginning of my 2nd term. And in my 1st term, we were told multiple times that we shouldn't set a precedent for something. So can you tell me why we should this time?
Well, co-signer, it's actually, I think, as Andy described it more clearly, you're passing through a loan, borrowing, and then passing it on. So maybe co-signer is the wrong term in that sense. The why is it's this opportunity to restore quality healthcare and the scope of services in terms of a full-service community hospital here in Chippewa County. The why is the need and the precedent. Yes, it is a precedent, but also the loss of these 2 hospitals was a precedent. I remember one of the first meetings I had with the board members, and one of them looked at me, this would have been March of 24, said, well, what have other hospitals done or other communities done when this has happened? Well, this doesn't happen in other communities. There are hospitals that have closed over the years. Generally, it's when the last physician retires in a small community. There's never been an example where a large multi-billion-dollar health system went to a community and said, we're going to eliminate 1,400 jobs and leave the market on what amounted to 60-day notice. these two hospitals in their last year of operations had revenue of over $240 million. For whatever decisions, they walked away from the community, left people hanging. There are people in this room who tried to and worked very hard to successfully get cancer patients mid-treatment to new locations. We don't want that to happen again. We want to bring control of the healthcare system back to the community. So it is a precedent, but it's important because of the circumstances and the crisis that we believe the county should consider making a precedent here.
Thank you.
This type of financing isn't a precedent. Other communities have used it for various types of projects, and our folks that we work with from UW-Madison Extension, they've kind of taught us a little bit about this, and there are other examples around the state where they've used this financing, but certainly for the county here, it would be a precedent.
Supervisor Hennick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You used a number of 27 patients. Is that at 100% capacity, or is that just an initial start?
Well, what we
Help
can't
me understand that.
Yeah. So St. Joe's, in the facility, the most beds we can, the most patients we can handle is 31. 31 patients overnight, when you count the OB space, critical care, and inpatient beds.
For how long?
That's the maximum capacity on any one day. There's 31 rooms. And so the way a hospital works, you can't really operate at 100% occupancy because there's time when patients go and there's varying demand. So 27, I can't do that math quickly in my head, it's about an 85% occupancy, which is essentially full for hospital services. So the only way we can see more patients in St. Joe's would be a major capital investment to convert rooms that are offices now back into patient rooms that they were a long time ago. We're talking millions of dollars there.
Thank you.
Supervisor Gutman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We talk about access to care. Obtaining access to medical care as in hospital, emergency room, critical care, typically are at the triangle of tertiary care. So I come from an area where accessing health care from a very rural area where I've been in the ditch doing CPR and waiting for an ambulance, waiting for the EMS system, which is of course also a challenge. How will the healthcare cooperative work with the infrastructure that's needed for public health, knowing that we as a state are one of the lowest per capita that invest in public health? Because I've got folks in my backyard that don't want to come to the hospital because they know that they can't afford it. Park that for one part of this. The other part of my question is that when I looked at the financials, about 65% of the patient payer mix is Medicare, Medicaid. And I appreciate that that is part of the payment model, but we also know that given what's been happening at things beyond our control at the local level, that we're going to see in the next 10 years likely changes to the Medicare and Medicaid, especially reimbursement rates. So I know that you're trying to obtain contracts with private employers, but that's only about 35% of your patient payment and your payer mix. So how is that going to be balanced, and what kinds of things are you putting into consideration? Because a lot of the people that I know are very worried, and they don't want to come to the hospital and won't come to the hospital until there is such a crisis. As you said, they're very sick, and they don't want to come because they know that the bill, either A, they can't pay, or they're going to be underinsured or uninsured.
Those are very challenging issues in America. And in terms of access, we are very proud to be working with the physicians in the Oak Leaf Medical Network that are dealing with some of the access things in terms of primary care all the time, and some of the employers looking through new models of connecting people with primary care. And we know that healthy habits and good primary care can keep people out of the hospital. But access can be an issue. we're also fortunate here with, if any of you are aware of some of the beginning work and looking at healthy communities with blue zones, and looking at environment and diet and those kinds of things. We can't change the world in a day with a hospital, but we are part of the community and we can focus on some of those things over time. We're working with the community health assessment that's going on now with Eau Claire and Chippewa County. We're part of that group. But those are tough issues. The access thing, we're going to see any patient regardless of ability to pay, period. So the Medicare and Medicaid issues, particularly on Medicaid, as you're aware, and many are, there's a lot of state and national implications for changes in Medicaid in particular. And I know this is going to sound maybe too glib, but healthcare has faced a lifetime of challenges, and people need to respond and look at new ways of doing things. And we feel that the model we're going to have in place, the partnership with the community, with the physicians, with businesses, our own structure of how we work in terms of flat and patient-focused operations, we're going to be able to adjust more effectively than compared to if we had a very infrastructure that was rigid and inflexible. So we are going to be able to make decisions quickly and adjust as it goes. But the reality is Medicaid is going to be a big part of the payer mix in this community. And we have to figure out how to serve Medicaid patients. And that's our commitment. And employers pay extra because Medicare and Medicaid pay less than cost. But our costs are going to be lower in a relative sense than they used to be when these hospitals were in operation. So that's going to be our key to long-term success and survival.
Just one other
Sure.
question. Thank you for that. So I know that before Supervisor Rochelle had spoken or asked about commercial lending. So with the potential for working with the CDFI, that isn't a possibility, like accessing new market tax credits or something like that?
We've explored that. We've explored new market tax credits, and we've explored USDA funding. We've explored federal appropriations, working with Congressman Van Orden and Senator Baldwin. The Rural Health Transformation Fund that the state is sort of trying to figure out right now what to do with that. We're talking to all those people all the time. The new market tax credit, it's very challenging to qualify. I don't think we're going to be able to qualify. Part of it is, I mean, we're in the weeds here, is the address. So the address of St. Joe's isn't in a socioeconomic district because you get points and you get more points if you're in a district that it's all very complicated. We all know way more about those things than we ever did because we've been working on, I don't know what the right analogy, barking up every tree and looking under every stone, trying to figure out a way to get this done. And our board members who are here, they're all volunteers. Up until recently, we went to every other month. We meet every Wednesday for hours, and then they're doing a ton of time outside of that trying to make this work. And I can say this, they won't. They're all in a position where they can get health care. They're doing this for their community.
Supervisor Isold.
Is there anybody in this room, not talking about our board members, that disagrees with it? If you haven't,
Can you repeat that? I didn't catch.
there's a lot of people in this room. Is there anybody in this room that disagrees with this? With this choice of a $10 million loan?
The time for that would have been members of public wishing to be heard. Yeah, right now, that really is a conversation between us and the representatives from the hospital.
My other question is that margins. And the difference between an employer paying a bill, we'll just take any kind of care, and then Medicaid or Medicare, there's a margin there. And you say it's gonna be different because your prices are gonna be lower. And then you have some costs that you're not gonna incur because you're administrative or certain things you're not gonna do. Do you know what that difference margin is with you versus somebody else to be able to sustain, I guess? Makes sense.
Well, we're comfortable stating that our commercial employer charges will be at least 15% below the average for the community. Obviously, we're dealing with public data. We don't have the inside information on every hospital in the area, exactly what they charge for X procedure, but based on aggregate numbers, we know we're gonna be at least 15% below.
That's not price, that's what you
Yeah.
pay.
Yes.
Because every health system in this country has a price which is far different than what your insurance company or your employer pays.
You know, and the CEO of HSHS that made the decision to close the hospital, his salary is $3.3 million. We're not gonna have somebody sucking that amount of money out of what we're doing. So the administration costs in themselves are gonna dramatically decrease. And we really need to understand why they failed. So their strategy when Marshfield pulled all of their physicians out and moved it into the Marshfield Hospital was, we're gonna bring Prevea in. We're gonna bring an insurance product in called Prevea 360. And it's gonna be a cheap insurance plan, and we're gonna get all kinds of patients on this plan, and we're gonna funnel them to our hospitals. And we're gonna funnel them to the Prevea clinics, and we're gonna make oodles of money because we're gonna undermine the market. The problem is the insurance product didn't take off. And as everybody knows, if you have a cheap insurance plan and you don't have enough people on the plan to offset your costs, you hemorrhage money. So they were hemorrhaging money on their insurance plan. HSHS was responsible for 49% of the costs for Prevea in western Wisconsin. We built these beautiful clinics, had all these physicians that filled these clinics, and they did not have the patients. So they were hemorrhaging money from Prevea, okay? The hospital was making money, but they were subsidizing the clinic, okay? We're not gonna have that. There's gonna be no clinic subsidization that's going on here. I think their ultimate decision was made because they wanted to push Prevea out of western Wisconsin, but they had such a positive relationship with them on the east side, they were afraid it was gonna ruin that relationship. And so I think they finally just threw their hands up and said, you know what? We don't have a solution for Prevea here, so we'll shut it all down and we'll leave the area. Now, my clinic personally was responsible for over 90% of the care for the patients at both St. Joseph's Hospital and Sacred Heart Hospital. So we were providing, we built a hospital service for them, we did cardiology for them, we did critical care for them. We were taking care of their patients. And we did that because we had worked with them so long. And they told us that most likely what was gonna happen is they were gonna sell to Aspirus, okay? And Aspirus was gonna take over, but they did not want to take over right away because they wanted to shut down St. Joseph's Hospital, but didn't want to be considered the bad guy in the community. So they were gonna shut down St. Joseph's, sell to Aspirus for $1, and Aspirus was gonna take over Sacred Heart Hospital for $1. And we were fine with that. We're like, we can work with them, we're fine, okay? We did not find out that they were shutting both hospitals down until the day they announced it. And we were the providers for those hospitals. So we were not involved in that at all. And in fact, they specifically said, Aspirus cannot talk to the Oakleaf doctors. It was part of the NDA. Couldn't talk to us. If they would have talked to us, we would have said, yeah, we're in. We'll keep the hospitals running. We'll work with you guys. We'll have a partnership. But when I found out that they turned it down for $1,
this is what this is all led. We were here, well, over $1. Think of that, $1. And we're dealing with this. Okay? Now, we have an opportunity to change healthcare. The system sucks. Okay? And we have an opportunity to change it, to create a different model that the rest of the country can look at and say, oh, look what they're doing over there in the Chippewa Valley. Maybe we should do that.
Okay, I think we're straying a touch off of the initial question from the board member. So have you had your question answered on that particular? I appreciate the input, but we do have a number of other questions coming through here tonight. On to Supervisor Erickson.
Yep, I've got like 5 of them. I assume with the emergency room, you're going to be 24/7?
Yes.
In the mission statement, and you briefly touched on this, will your mission statement be you'll take care of a patient no matter their ability to pay?
Yes.
With all the loans that you're going to have, will we be number 1 position with all the loans?
No.
Okay. If we would vote yes on this, could it be arranged where you could not build a new building until we have that loan paid off?
Yes.
Yes.
Covenants in that, in your terms that would meet your needs.
Thank you. Then you also touched on it a couple times about personal guarantees that some of the people have. Will our $10 million loan have any personal guarantees on it?
No.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Supervisor, you're good? All right, Supervisor Seidlitz.
Well, obviously with a $200,000 a month payment, we all got funds, notes and stuff. So I appreciate that you said we can, after looking at our notes, we can submit some questions to Andy.
Yes. Yes.
But I'm gonna just have one question here. With the hundreds of applications and curious individuals, how will you address that we are the 4th highest in healthcare costs in the nation, but yet our state ranks 29th in taking care of our nurses? How will you appeal to retaining and recruiting nurses for your facility?
Well, we believe in paying competitively, market-based payroll, so people aren't going to work for less if they work for us. But part of our ability to provide value is by not asking nurses, or physicians, or any other employees to do things that don't add value to patients. So it's creating a culture where there's a voice by the workers, and that is the essence of a lean culture. Those who do the work have a great impact on how the work gets done. It's not someone out of town has an idea of how people should work, and then they tell. We go to where the patient is, where the employees are, and we listen to staff and get their involvement. And we, and those of us that are working on this, have experience in that approach, and that creates a culture of engagement with staff and patients, obviously, but with staff where you have good retention and high job satisfaction. And we have data from our prior work that shows that. So it's culture is a key part of this, whether it's nurses, lab technicians, nutrition services, housekeeping, environmental services, whatever.
Yeah, and obviously with no track record, they're taking a chance, being employed for your facility. But I understand with the marketplace wages, that ranks us 29th in the nation. That's the problem of nurses wanting to come here because we're so far below the national average on nurses' pay.
Yeah, I haven't seen that data. I'm not saying it's wrong. It is a kind of or whatever, a dilemma if costs are high but nurse wages are so low. But we're going to pay people market rates fairly, and they're going to enjoy their work and get joy back in their workforce. And we have some of that demonstrated by some of the team that are working in oncology. They're here tonight. And It's a wonderful place to work when you can walk the halls and talk to the people that are taking care of patients and doing work and say, what do you think? What do you think we should do? And they have an issue or a problem, and then we do it. We fix it. We don't have to get a committee together. We don't have to send it all the way up, whatever hierarchy is in place. We don't have to send it out of town and have somebody say, well, we can't do it that way because we have another facility that does it a different way, and we have to do it the same everywhere, regardless of size or community needs and technology, all of those things. And we didn't have this in our slides, but there are 2 spots in the 2 hospitals, Sacred Heart and St. Joe's, where I've taken pictures. It's 2 offices. They're right next to each other. They happen to be in imaging, but it might exist in other parts of the hospital. One says imaging manager, one says imaging assistant manager. So these are departments with 15, 20, 30 people. So in my head, this is a world I've not experienced because I've not worked in that kind of environment with such hierarchy. A staff person goes ask the assistant manager, I got an issue, blah, blah, blah. I say, okay, I'll check on it. Then they go next door to the manager and ask the same question. This is the stuff that we're going to cut out and not have. It's costly, and it's bad for patients and staff and retention. So that's where we're going to get some of the savings.
Okay, thanks for your answer. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Supervisor Gehring.
I have a question and then a comment. Question is actually of you, Mr. Chair. Could you refresh me on a timetable that we're going to have to make this decision?
Right now, it's still tentative. I have to sit down with the administrator, but the most likely scenario is this will be back in front of the executive committee in June, and we would likely call a special meeting on the 23rd. The Tuesday, the 23rd would be the most likely landing date right now. There was nothing set in stone because we wanted to get a feel of how everything went tonight and what timelines they were looking for and to get a feel for what the supervisors were thinking in terms of. But we are, that would be the earliest to be back to the full board would be a special meeting. We talked about the 23rd or the Tuesday before, but I think 23rd would probably make the most sense.
Thank you. So my comment is going to be to my fellow supervisors. I was on the executive committee in November, listened to, I think, even a more extensive presentation than tonight. There was some issues that we couldn't get clarified, so it got delayed. I think those hurdles have been covered. But with what Chairman has just told us timeline, we have a golden opportunity because now we have the time to go talk to our constituents. The age-old political question is, do I vote the way I feel because I'm elected, or do I vote the way my constituents want me to vote? We have time now to go talk to our constituents. I've already done that. I have yet to find somebody that is in disagreement with this. I think the question came about, is there anybody in disagreement? I haven't found that person yet. This is something the county needs. This is something the area needs. We have the time to talk to our constituents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Hennick, I'm going to jump to Supervisor Kelly because he has not had the opportunity to weigh in here. So Supervisor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. I want this to work. Which is probably just as bad as anybody, but my ultimate fear is failure, right? Like, we haven't talked about that at all. Like, just that contingency plan of failure, right? The county will be on the hook for 10 million. There'll be somebody else out there on the hook for 20. And you just said that we're the lowest on the totem pole to get repaid, which means ultimately us taxpayers are going to have to, we would lose a hospital again, and we'd still be on the hook for $10 million, right?
So, fair point. You're not the lowest on the totem pole. It's just that we're not going to give preference to any creditor over one another, so it would be equal. So if there's a debt instrument out there that's $20 million, it's going to be ratable to all parties. They're not going to subrogate to one another. The risk of failure is this. When you have community members and physicians that are at greater risk than the county, it gives me great comfort that these individuals and entities are going to guide us and govern us to success. When you have doctors that have committed to assist with this, That's monumental.
All right, Supervisor Romeyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Bergeron. When I did my walk around for my nomination papers, first question I asked everyone was about the hospital. And we already were aware of the $10 million guarantee. And I laid it out for them as much as I knew it. And not a one was against it. And I also heard virtually everyone had their individual story about either themselves or a friend or a relative. And I feel like Supervisor Gehring, this isn't my decision. I'm the messenger. I was elected to vote the opinion of my constituents. And I think that's very important. And lastly, Andy, I'm going to tell the story. Last January, I was in the emergency room. I was up with a annual physical. They took me down to the emergency room, and I was having a heart attack. I laid in the emergency room for 3 days. They couldn't find a doctor. They didn't have a doctor, nor did they have a room. They kept pumping me full of blood thinner because one of my arteries was just about 100%. And they kept me alive, and I'm very grateful for that. And that's outrageous in today's world, how this played out. But I wasn't the only one. They had people on blankets on the floor. And it's like you were talking about the garage. And I never in a million years would I have believed that could happen. So I guess in my personal opinion, then also, I support what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Supervisor Hennick.
I personally have talked to my constituents also, and I haven't had one say that we should not have a hospital. Now, I think that's important, but I have another part of the question. I'm a veteran. I have causations that take me to the hospital on a regular basis from state. VA pays less to hospitals, and Mayo is currently backing off on accepting veterans as patients because of it. Where do you sit on that?
Mr. Hennick, we haven't had specific discussions about VA. In my past world, we've taken VA patients where there is access, if there's not access to a VA hospital in the area. So I assume we will. Dr. Mason, do you?
I'm Dr. Emily Mason. I just want to speak from my experience. The Wound Care Center goes to the VA nursing home weekly to provide care there, and we have a large percentage of our patients are VA community care patients. So we are actively seeing VA patients now.
Dr. Mason is medical director for the Wound Care Center at.
And I would add, Supervisor, that to Mike's earlier comment, we're not going to discriminate based upon who your payer is. That can be abused, by the way. And I won't go down that path tonight. We will manage that appropriately, but if you need medical attention and care, we will be there to provide it for you.
Thank you, ma'am. Hooah! What you do?
Supervisor Hardy.
I know you said how many relative beds there would be, but how many like emergency bays or spaces there be?
One of the physicians, no, I think they're like 12. Or Angela, you probably know. Is it 12? Emergency bays at St. Joe's? 12? Yeah.
And I'd just like to provide a couple of statements. My husband worked at Sacred Heart Hospital as a speech therapist, and the drain on the community from all of those people losing their jobs in a minute was enormous, and I know we've lost a lot of talent already. So I think finding ways to keep a lot of that talent here would be very nice.
as someone who has been to the emergency room at St. Joe's himself, and then having to go farther away for a foster child was frightening. And that's kind of why I want to know how many actual days there would be, because I think everybody in this community knows that if you are in a life-risking moment, that the amount of time that we have to get somewhere to be safe is scary. And for someone who has lost a very good job because of this closure, and because of the threat of danger, there are a lot of people who may consider moving away. And I think I ran on a platform for families and for foster children especially, and to support our working families, to support our new members to this community. We really need to think hard about what's best for them and the amazing how unique this is, as we were told at the very, very beginning. There's nothing else like this. That's scary. That's scary for us. That's scary for our taxpayers.
Yeah, but we're going to succeed. We're going to get this done. And the community is going to be very proud of your community hospital. And in terms of bringing some of those folks, some of them are here who were part of the HSHS team, and they all have friends and colleagues who contact them all the time. When are you going to start hiring? When are we going to fill these jobs and those jobs? So we're very confident we're going to bring back some great people and keep those jobs with good benefits and good wages here in the community, which then provides the care that this community needs for the long term. And another part of the sustainability piece is we bought St. Joe's Hospital for under $1 million. It would cost way more than that to build it. I'm not saying it's worth that because it stands there empty. It can only be used as a hospital, but it would cost way more than that to build that. So we don't have that debt on our books. Yes, we're going to have some debt on our balance sheet, but we're not going to have 100 million or 120 million, the cost of building the new hospital. We'll address that when the day comes, and we're ready to do that down the road.
Supervisor Gutman.
Thank you. First of all, I want to just commend you for going back and bringing back this amount of information and restructuring the model of what you've brought forward, because I think you have done a significant change from where you were. So I appreciate that.
Thanks.
A question that I have, because this has to do with pipeline, as workforce, I'm assuming that there would be potential collaboration with our universities and tech programs for the various professions that are needed, as well as recruiting people who either have disseminated or are holding out and waiting to come back to a local hospital.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. We've had a number of conversations with the leadership at Chippewa Valley Technical College, particularly in the nursing and EMS programs, a little bit with UWEC, but more with the Technical College, which is a great source of healthcare training and healthcare workers. So, yep.
What other questions do we have?
Just wanted to make one comment, yes. Well, from a...
Dr. Longbella, who's on.
My name's, Chris Longbella. I'm an OBGYN physician. Delivered my first baby in Chippewa County in October of 1992. It's been around a while. I'm the current president of Oak Leaf Clinics. Oak Leaf Clinics is the largest clinic that's part of the Oak Leaf Medical Network, which, as you know, is a kind of clinic without walls, clinically integrated network of different small physician practices. I just want to address the issue of the kind of physician guarantee and just kind of let you know that as a county, the Oak Leaf Clinics entity has already made a decision basically to guarantee as an entity $10 million towards the project. So we're on the line with you, presumably, should you vote to move ahead, should there be a default. Now, unlike you, we have a lot of control over making sure the project is successful by basically showing up and working there and doing what we do and doing more of what needs to be done, all of what Dr. Thapar was addressing earlier. But we're going to have a lot of skin in the game. Our entity has about 100 providers. About half of them are physicians. The other half are PAs and NPs. We have a little over 500 employees. And we don't have a future if we don't have a place to practice medicine. And I'll give you one example. Performa that you saw as it relates to obstetric care, which is what I do, is based on about 450 deliveries. St. Joe's really has never had 450 deliveries in the history of their existence. Probably came close to that at some point in time. Our group that was delivering babies in the Chippewa Valley at the time that the hospitals closed was 13 providers, 2 family practice docs that did OB, 5 certified nurse midwives that delivered babies, and 6 obstetricians. We delivered about 700 to 800 patients in general. And at the time of the closure, there were only 5 of us that had privileges in a hospital in the Chippewa Valley to deliver babies. And those are still the same 5 that currently have privileges. We were not able to privilege anybody else to deliver babies, despite the fact that they're very qualified to do so in any of the health system institutions in the Chippewa Valley. So last year, we delivered 726 babies, 5 of us. And we managed to keep all of the rest of our OB providers employed and working in our clinics, with the exception of 2 nurse midwives who needed to deliver babies and keep their skills up somewhere else and are more than interested in coming back when we have an opportunity to actually privilege them someplace where they can do their work. And so I think if there's a concern that you're standing alone in standing behind this, just know that you're not at all. My particular service area has been an interesting disaster as far as I can tell in the 35 years that I've been around. When I came, there were 18 places that delivered babies in western Wisconsin. And I signed a contract to work here about 3 months before they announced that the Mayo Clinic was in a merger and acquisition mode in western Wisconsin, soon to be followed by the Marshfield Clinic. And those health systems essentially are down to each owning one and operating one hospital that delivers babies in the Chippewa Valley, even though they ultimately were responsible for owning 14 of the units that previously delivered babies when I had shown up. The other 3 that are in existence are independent places in Baldwin, Hayward, and the Crone Clinic and Black River Falls Memorial Hospital. And basically the only independent community-owned place that's quit delivering babies, still owned and independently run, is Cumberland. But anyway, long story short is that, we're super excited about the possibility of having a place where we can have local control over what goes on. It's incredulous to me to think that we can have a health system that makes $1 billion on the investment income that they make on their dollars that they have in the bank, and they're closing labor and delivery units that are literally critical to rural healthcare access. We can have another one that figures out how to lose $525 million in 2 years, making decisions about needing to build hospitals. Another one that goes out of business because they need to duplicate a physician workforce that's already in place, that literally was a physician workforce that walked into their hospitals with them from 150 years ago till now. And so if you're looking for a reason or, looking to understand what happened is called greed. Health systems that decided they had to own everything, and if they couldn't, they couldn't figure out how to play in the sandbox with others. And that's not this entity. I think you'll find that the leadership people that we have and the physicians that we have are going to all be very interested in trying to figure out how to listen to the people that we live and work with in our community and work with the people that we live and work with in our community. Just one example of that to me is that early on in the co-op's process, they made a decision to talk to Rogers about behavioral health. If you've been in the Chippewa Valley, you know that every single community survey that's been done for 30 years has talked about the huge need in behavioral health, adolescent health, and all of that stuff. We've got two of the biggest healthcare systems in the United States between Sanford, now owning Marshfield, and the Mayo Clinic, and they couldn't solve those problems for us. The co-op talked to Rogers about coming over here and looking around and seeing what they could do and seeing what they could help us do. And ultimately, Rogers ended up here and got some of that money that had previously been designated to go to the HSHS system to do some of the similar things. But thank God that they got over here, they got that money, and you guys actually decided to help them with what they're doing, because after 30 years, some of that stuff is actually going to start happening that has never happened, despite the fact that we have a couple of the biggest healthcare systems in the United States in our marketplace. And so I would have just encouraged you all to do what I've learned that Chippewa does that makes Chippewa Chippewa, is they solve their problems themselves. They don't look to people from the outside to solve their problems for them. And that's who we are and what we are. We're here, we've been here. The independent physician community has been walking through the hospitals for as long as anybody has. We're not going anywhere. And as I said, we're motivated to try to make this work and make it successful and make it the best thing that you've ever seen in the Chippewa Valley as far as health. So that's our commitment.
All right, this is a last call for questions. We'll have them all in the room. Do we have any more questions for the representatives? All right, hearing none, I'll say thank you to all the representatives at Chippewa Valley Health Cooperative. There was a lot of great information.
One just quick thing. Again, get questions to us. We're happy to answer them directly in a conversation or in writing. Also, if any of you haven't been at St. Joe's lately and want a tour to look at the shape the hospital's in now and what's going on, we'd be happy to set that up too within the legalities of meetings and things like that. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
Along.
Yep. Thank you for all the information. Being with us. As you can imagine, this is a big decision. And thank you to all the supervisors. There was a lot of thoughtful questions that I think really helped push the conversation forward. So it was a very worthwhile evening. And I just double checked my calendar to make sure I wasn't misquoting for Supervisor Gehring's question. The most likely scenario will be this will be back to the executive committee at the second meeting of June, which would be the 16th. And then there would need to be a special meeting on the 23rd to follow that up. That's the most likely scenario for next steps. Having said that, we're on to agenda items for future consideration. Please do not hesitate to get those out to myself or Administrator Alvarado. And then we are on to number 10, adjournment.
Erickson.
Lots.
To adjourn.
We have a first and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.